Welcome to this edition of the GoVols247 Podcast. I'm Patrick Brown. I am with Ron Callahan here at Neyland Stadium. I also believe we are live on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel as well. Here it's about 10:15, a few hours after Tennessee's 44-41 overtime loss to Georgia. A real heartbreaker and just a tough day for Tennessee to have a game sort of in their grasp, Ryan, and then have it kind of go the other way there at the end. There's a lot of things you can dissect, as Josh Heupel said after the game, a lot of one-play kind of series, a series of one-play what ifs, if you will, that certainly could have changed the outcome of the game. So what do we make of this, Ryan, and sort of what's your big, I guess, takeaway from what we saw today?
I think overall so many positives to take away from this for Tennessee. You saw tangible proof of the gap between these two programs having closed, and Tennessee not only plays with Georgia for 4 quarters, but has the game right there for the taking in the final seconds. You feel bad for Max Gilbert. He's a really talented kicker. A lot of people have, I haven't seen a lot of the television feed, but people have commented on thinking he looked scared in that moment. I mean, I would be. A lot of people would be. They practice as much as they can for late game situations like that. Pressure situations. Coaches will. Every coach has a different approach to teaching those situations, but sometimes you put them in a spot where you say, okay, practice is over now if you hit this kick, things like that. So you feel the tension and you try to get ready for a moment like that. But let's face it, there's no simulating that moment. And so the game gets away there at the end of regulation, and Tennessee just wasn't able to recover from that in overtime, even though Gilbert did a great job of bouncing back and making a pretty tough kick again in overtime. So you give him credit for getting off the mat in a tough spot and making a kick that at least kept Tennessee in it. We saw back in 1998, Jeff Hall making a similar kick was enough to win Tennessee the game. So you never know how important that would have been, and he did his part there. But Tennessee just didn't make enough plays in overtime to win the game, and obviously it didn't. There's so many things you could look back on. The decision making in the fourth quarter on a couple of drives in Georgia territory is going to be picked apart quite a bit. Just so many things that could have gone a little bit differently, obviously, in a game like this that was so back and forth, so tightly contested, especially in the second half, that could have given Tennessee a maybe not a program-changing win, but one that would have clearly put Tennessee in that discussion at the top of the country as one of the top programs in the SEC now, and put them firmly in the, if not in the driver's seat, firmly in the mix as a serious playoff contender going into the remainder of the season. And now they've got to decide the rest of the way what this loss means. We may look back on this as just sort of a bump in the road, a missed opportunity for Tennessee. We may look back at this as sort of a fork in the road game where Tennessee's season started to go downhill a little bit. But I can't help but think about the injuries that Tennessee dealt with today. In a game like this, not having Jackson Moy, not having David Hobbs, not having your top 2 cornerbacks, that all mattered. It all came into play. No way to know what would have happened without it. But in a game of inches, really, and against such a good opponent, you felt those absences in this game. And Tennessee got a lot of good contributions from other players, but just not enough to overcome all of that and the things that they, kind of the self-inflicted wounds like the false starts and some of those penalties that cost them in big spots. It was just it's a tough game with a lot of what ifs for Tennessee to think about in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to me, whether you want to call it the monkey off the back, the gorilla, whatever it is, slaying the dragon. Tennessee had a chance to knock Georgia. Like they're the top dog in the SEC, pun intended. Sorry. They're the team that if you want to win, this conference, you're gonna have to go through them. And you had a great chance to put them away several times before it got down to a kick, and it's on poor Max Gilbert, who, again, to be fair, he should go out and he's on the team to kick field goals and extra points. Sure. He's got to make that job, he would say, and he did come back and make a kick from a similar spot. But you get up 21-7, and then you give up a long touchdown drive where Georgia had, I think, 2 third-down conversions and a 4th-down conversion, right? That's a chance to, if you get a stop there, your offense was clicking at that point. Maybe you go up 28-7 and never becomes a 4-quarter battle. Then you get in the second half, you do a great job of, taking some punches back, and you get back ahead. You get a great play from Joshua Josephs around the edge, a sack fumble. you're up 35-30, you have the ball in plus territory, you have a chance to go and go up 2 scores. And Josh Heupel admitted after the game, like, that was a spot where you could have been more aggressive. And they weren't. They ran it 3 times. He kind of talked about it being, what Georgia was playing, where their safeties were. They ran it a couple times, and they felt good about, I guess, a trap play on 3rd down that they didn't get. They get a long field goal there, but it's still a 1-score game. And then at that point, Georgia goes down the field. Touchdown pass. That was just a great throw by Gunnar Stockton. And that's going to happen in this game. I thought that happened several times in this game where both teams just made just great plays, right? Ty Redmond had some tough moments today. He made a great play on the 3rd down before that, but then he just gets beat over the top. And I don't think he was in bad position. It's just a great throw and catch. Sometimes it's going to happen, but that's a chance to, if you go up 2 scores, you have a chance to change how Georgia has to play the final 7 or so minutes of the game. If you get a stop there, then you're in control of the clock. You're able to eat some clock, maybe make Georgia use timeouts, and they've got to go back down the field and still have to score a touchdown, 2-point conversion. And then, of course, at the end of regulation, that'll be second guess. I'm sure it has been too, where, what if Sham Umarov doesn't false start? I mean, Tennessee was, as Heupel said of the game, you're lining up the field goal on that upright, not necessarily in the middle. I guess that's probably where they wanted it. But you have the false start. And then at that point, you don't feel like you want to lose any more yardage by doing something with 7 seconds left. So they kick it there. Should they have kicked it on, even before the false start? Sure, but ideally you don't leave any time for Georgia to do anything after that. So that would have been the point. But Heupel after the game was kind of just talking about how this can be something that they look back on. They have to use this disappointment and sharpen their focus to kind of get over the hump when they maybe get this another opportunity like this again. But at the same time, it's like you had this game right there. I mean, it was on your kicker's foot there at the end of regulation to go win the game. So it has to go down as a missed opportunity for me. And we were kind of talking before we started recording. This is the toughest loss of this kind for Tennessee since the Oklahoma game in 2015. And they've lost some games on the final play and in overtime and whatnot, but just sort of a chance for on the big stage, a big kind of breakthrough win. And it goes from everyone in this whole place is ready to explode. To see that, it kind of felt like the 2022 Alabama game, which is the back and forth, just a great classic game with 2 high level teams. These quarterbacks, I don't know that it wasn't quite Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker, but shoot, Gunnar Stockton and Joey Aguilar both played great, had some big time throws and plays in this game. It kind of felt like that. The only thing that different was that the kicker didn't go through in the end. So just a really, it's a tough one for Tennessee because we have no idea how the next 9 games are going to play out, but however they play out, this is going to have to go down, I think, as a huge missed opportunity for this season and for this program. Now, Tennessee could bounce back and, still make the playoffs, still do a lot of great things this season, but this is going to be one that's going to probably have to smart for a while. And I'm sure it is for a lot of fans because you were right there and you had this game in your grasp and couldn't make it happen. But yeah, we are live, I think, on YouTube. So if you're listening on the podcast, thank you. And if we're kind of figuring this out. Ben is sort of our podcast. He kind of knows all the ins and outs, and our thoughts are with him as he continues to go through his situation and a full week of cancer treatment. So I hope he's doing well and that. But yeah, Ryan, what do you kind of take? Is you think Tennessee's going to be fine after this, or do you think this is sort of going to be a setback that impacts them the rest of the way? Because it does take away a lot of their cushion in terms of college football playoff. Used to be this would be devastating because there were only 4 teams to get in, whatever. Now 2 losses you can probably still get in, but now they have to go navigate the rest of the schedule with some potential pitfalls and some tougher games and things like that. And now you've already got 1 loss this early. So how do you think Tennessee kind of goes from here?
Well, I will say the fact that we're even thinking in terms of the college football playoff shows how much this team has raised the bar since the start of the season, because I don't think many people were looking at this team as a college football playoff team before Tennessee played Syracuse. So I think it's easy in moments like this that are difficult for fans and for players and coaches and everybody to deal with. It's easy to lose sight of the big picture, which is this team is better than we thought it was going to be going into the season. And they showed that today by, let's face it, putting themselves in position to beat a top 10 team and a team they hadn't beaten in 9 years. So that's the tough part. Is it obviously is a missed opportunity. And until you show you can beat a program like Georgia, it's hard to make a case for yourself as one of those teams at the very top of the conference, So this is kind of one of those monkey off the back games until they win it, they're not going to be viewed as quite in that same discussion. Now, that being said, they still got a lot of games in front of them that could change that. And if Tennessee was to win out the rest of the way, that changes things. So take care of business. And, if you beat Oklahoma and hold serve in the games that you have at home and the games that you're going to be favored in the rest of the way, you've still got a chance to have a very good season. But now what this does realistically is forces Tennessee to do something they haven't done in more than 20 years. You've either got to go win at Alabama or win at Florida. And obviously winning at Florida doesn't look as difficult as it did at the start of the season, but Florida's at least putting up a fight tonight against LSU. That's not going to be a rollover game by any stretch. And, we've seen Tennessee lose to some bad Florida teams, let's face it. So can't take anything for granted in that game. And then Alabama, after they lost to Florida State in week 1, a lot of people, I think, were kind of circling that game as a big opportunity for Tennessee. Alabama's looked better the past couple of weeks, so we don't know what the next several weeks hold for those two teams and how Tennessee and Alabama will look by the time they get to that one. But yeah, a lot of games to be played and a lot to be decided. But this just it leaves Tennessee with a narrower path to the college football playoff. And I kind of said going into it, though, I think you really, and I said this before Ricky Gibson went down against Syracuse and before David Sanders missed the first 3 games. They've had some tough setbacks in terms of injuries. I just thought Tennessee needed to get through these first 5 games 4-1 somehow. Didn't matter how it happened. If you can just navigate these first 5 games, you're going to be a better team probably after that open date. And now going to Mississippi State in a couple of weeks, I should say, that's not a shoe-in. Mississippi State's playing better than they did last year, so that's maybe a more challenging road game than we would have expected looking at the schedule during the offseason. But if they can get through the next 2 weeks, find ways to get wins against UAB and Mississippi State and get to the open date, you've got guys like David Hobbs. We'll see what Jackson Moy's status is. You should be getting closer to full strength by the time you come out of that open date next month. And then you're maybe a better team in the second half of the year than you even have been to this point. So obviously a lot can happen, a lot can change. More players are going to get hurt as the season goes along. So who knows what changes and how the outlook differs in 3 or 4 weeks from now. But it is definitely a team that's capable of doing a lot more than people thought. That after Nico Iamaleava left, some people thought this was a 7-5, 8-4 kind of roster and team, and they were clearly being underestimated, I think, by a lot of people. And now they've shown they can compete. But now they've got to not let this game kind of send them down on a downward spiral, and they've got to recover and get some guys healthy and maybe rest some guys next week against UAB because they're pretty banged up and had a lot of guys play a lot of snaps on the defensive line and things like that this week where they were pretty shorthanded and just had to kind of gut through it in a tough game.
Yeah, I think kind of looking at this game too, probably the takeaways are that, hey, the offense continued to look pretty good. You've got a pretty good quarterback. Joey Aguilar threw for 371 yards, 4 touchdowns. All of his receivers looked really good. I mean, there's some plays left out there. I think in overtime, there was a catch that or a play that Aguilar probably liked back because, he had Mike Matthews coming pretty open on a drag route. And if they connect there, he's easily getting a first down. That changes maybe how overtime goes there. But Chris Brazel has 6 catches, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns, makes 2 great downfield plays against coverage that one he was being interfered with, and the other one he maybe got away with interference. I didn't think so. I didn't think he really pushed off. I think he just more did what he was supposed to do on that play. But Braylon Staley had a good game too. So they've got some receivers. They've got a really good quarterback. I think we got to give the offensive line credit. I don't know that they gave up any sacks today, did they? We're looking at the box. So that's,
one sack.
They gave up 1 sack. I mean, the protection was, I think, pretty good. It was the offense kind of started, on fire. Then they went through, I think they had 5 drives where it was punt, interception, 3-and-out, interception. But they snapped out of it, right? So you go down the field, you get the big touchdown to Chris Brazel. You go down the field again with another drive. And then you go down the field at the end of the game to win the game, and you're leaning on your offensive line. I thought that was going to be a really important moment for Tennessee because they pretty much ran the ball down the field there. They had the 3rd down conversion to Staley early to get it going inside the final 2 minutes, and then they kind of leaned on their offensive line and the running backs to run them down there in position to win the game. So I think you take the positive takeaway from this game is the offense. You go score 41 points on Georgia, you should be feeling pretty good about yourself. You should also probably win the game, which is where I think the big concern coming out of this game is for Tennessee. You touched on some of the injuries, and I think you felt the the missing Jackson Moy, missing David Hobbs there, particularly on, to open the second half when Georgia runs it 13 times in 14 plays to score. I think you maybe miss it there and some other run plays too. Now, they did come back from that drive and play pretty good run defense the next two series to keep Tennessee in the game, so we have to give some credit there. But, you take those guys out of the equation. Ty Redmond had an up and down day. Georgia, I don't think they really ever tried Colton Hood. I don't think he was targeted very much at all. But they went at Redmond right on the first play. The fourth down touchdown was over his head too. And that's a guy that, he's your fourth corner at this point because you don't have Jamal McCoy Gibson. We're not making excuses. You got who you've got. But as you look forward, I think they've got to figure out a way to shore up the defense. I don't know what Georgia finished on third down, but that was obviously a big key in this game.
8 of 17.
Yeah, I think at one point they were 6 of 10. So, and they converted a couple fourth downs as well that were key points, I think, in each half. So, when you're going, Mississippi State's playing well on offense. They moved the ball on you last season. Arkansas with Taylor Green, they got the ball at Ole Miss, potentially just driving to win late there. So you got to play Mateer. So they've got to get some guys back on defense, like you said. But this offense, it kind of shows what we know, right? 3 games into the season, we were all wondering what the offense was going to look like. Offense looks great. At a very high level. Now it's not perfect. They had, Aguilar threw a couple interceptions today. They didn't convert some fourth downs. There was a miss to Matthews in overtime. There was another miss on third down to Staley where Aguilar threw behind him where he was there.
I think only one run of 10 yards or more. So that's obviously not ideal.
Yeah, true. They didn't run the ball great, but they were also throwing it all over the place. So, more big plays than they've had against Georgia in probably the last 8 games combined. I think long term that's what looks good, but I think in the moment you're just like you're probably feeling pretty deflated if you're Tennessee's coaches and players. And I don't know if they're angry. You're probably just a little stunned. The players that we talked to after the game, there were 5 of them. They were just kind of, I don't want to say in shock, but just kind of like what just happened, because everybody was so ready to go celebrate. And like I said, it felt like the Alabama game from 2022. There was back and forth, all that, but they just didn't make the kick at the end. So we do have a comment from, I believe, YouTube. Rip Rap says that Tennessee's defensive linemen are too undersized in this league, and they stay injured throughout the season. We always have key players out for these big games. I do think it's unfortunate, with Moy, he just gets hurt, playing football. A lot of guys that play football get hurt playing football. Certainly you missed him today. You've been pretty high on David Hobbs, Ryan, in his situation. He was not walking around. Last week, in pregame, he was walking around with a walking boot and a crutch to get around. He didn't have either of those. So maybe he's on his way back from the foot injury, but I don't think you'd play him next week. Moy was downgraded to doubtful from questionable on the availability report. We'll have to see about his status this week. We won't have an availability report to lean on, but then he was downgraded out. And they didn't have David Sanders either, which, not to throw anything on Sham Umarov, but he's wouldn't be in your starting lineup if Sanders was healthy. So just those little things pop up, and as Heupel said after the game, just a lot of little details. Just you kind of wonder what if and what might have been when you don't win a game like this.
Yeah, and that's the reality is you can drive yourself crazy. I'm sure coaches will as they go back over the film and say, man, look at that. So many things that like if you do this one little thing different, maybe the game goes a different way, and that's just how close it is. That's why coaches do spend so much time poring over every little detail, because you never know what it's going to be that costs them a game. And look what we're talking about. because of the emphasis on whether Tennessee was aggressive enough up by 5, trying to add to its lead after the turnover there that forced by Josh Josephs and the fumble recovery by Bryson Eason. Coming out of that, you have a false start penalty that backs them up, and so that's maybe one reason you're a little more conservative. You don't want to ruin the field goal chance there. And yeah, Tennessee had 10 penalties for 82 yards in this game. That's definitely not a. We've seen that plenty of times under Josh Heupel, that his teams they tend to have a few too many penalties in a lot of games. But in this series in particular, they'd been worse with that on the road against Georgia than they had been at home in terms of being penalized themselves. So they had 2 key false start penalties there in the fourth quarter during each of those key sequences. Obviously, the false start in the final seconds kind of forcing Tennessee to just say, screw it, send the field goal unit out there. We're kicking it now, not letting anything else bad happen, where they maybe could have, if not gotten it closer, at least lined it up better for Max Gilbert to minimize the chances of a miss like you saw. Again, you said as Josh Heupel mentioned, he's trying to go for the upright there, not a straight on kick. as a kicker, I probably wouldn't want it straight down the middle. I'd probably want it a little bit off to one side. So they figured out that's his comfort zone. They didn't do that. They decided to just run him out there after the false start penalty. So a couple of false starts that really hurt. You had some pass interference penalties in the secondary. You can't help but wonder what this game would have looked like with Tremod McCoy and or Ricky Gibson out there, because I think either one could have made a big difference in this game potentially. Not that they played poorly at corner, just they did get beat down the field a couple times and gave up actually 304 passing yards to a team that hadn't really thrown it down the field very much in its first 2 games. So, some things that they definitely need to clean up. But overall, as you said, the offense is the thing you have to come away impressed by. Joey Aguilar threw the 2 picks, but 371 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, Chris Brazzell had a game that had people thinking Jalen Hyatt against Alabama in 2022. I mean, just throwing up 50-50 balls, and he seems to come down with them every time. And this is a guy that couldn't get involved in the offense regularly last year. Just wasn't this was kind of a disappointment in year 1. Here's another example of maybe a guy breaking out in year 2 at wide receiver in this offense for Tennessee. So plenty of good things to build on for Tennessee. Just a frustrating situation because they have kind of had some bad breaks in terms of the timing of injuries and guys not coming back in time for big games like this. And certainly going into the season opener, we never would have guessed David Sanders would still be sitting out in the 3rd game of the season. So that's not ideal. And that obviously had impacted the false start late in the game. As you mentioned, Sanders would have been out there instead of Sham Umarov, but who knows what problems Sanders would have had. It would have been his first start if he'd come back this week. So you never know how that would have gone. But so many what ifs, and you can drive yourself crazy with that in a game like this. But that's the bottom line. Tennessee just had some missed opportunities and every chance to win this game, and just couldn't find a way to get it done.
Yeah, if you're watching on the stream, you're probably wondering what the heck my facial expressions are about. There's 3 screens over here with other SEC games on, and there's some stuff going on. I mean, LSU got a big play, then a fumble, and then just threw a pick. Ole Miss, I think, just saved the game against Arkansas with a turnover. So this is sort of I guess the benefit of a live stream. But you have some injuries, you had some guys missing, but you're still right there. And we should give some credit where credit is due. Chris Brazzell, I think, he had 125 yards last week and 177 this week. He might have surpassed, I can't do the math off my head there. He might have surpassed his entire total from last season already. I know he has in terms of touchdowns because he only had 2 last season. He had 3 today and 2 last week against ETSU. So he's done a great job, and they've done a good job. This is a guy that missed most of preseason camp. So credit to him. Matthews made some really nice plays today. I think there was one against Dalen Everett, who's going to play in the NFL very soon. And Matthews just sort of out-muscled him and made a contested catch, got enough separation, and made a great play. Staley is very quick over the middle. Ryan, you got some math for us?
Yeah, Brazzell already has surpassed his season total for last year in 3 games. 364 yards and 5 touchdowns last year, 333 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I think I said during the game that the first play he made where he was getting interfered with, and it wasn't, Ellis Robinson didn't do you got to just kind of tackle him there at that point if you're beat deep like that. That's probably a play where he doesn't even complete the catch or score, much less score, and instead of a 72-yard touchdown, it's a 15-yard penalty, and who knows how that goes. Probably the same thing on the deep shot that he beat Daniel Harris on was just a subtle little move on another heave, and that was another good play where it's we're kind of surprised he caught it in the moment because he just kind of positioned his body. This is a guy that left a lot of plays out there last season. So to see him making some downfield plays with some contested situations, that was pretty good too. So I think there's some positives for Tennessee to take away, but man, you just kind of let this one go. And that's going to be tough. Now they've got to come back next week. Heupel talked about how the process after a loss is the coaches will be in the building tomorrow. The players will be too, but they don't kind of reset the week until Monday. So that the coaches obviously have a lot of recruiting. There are a lot of recruits there. I'm sure you can, if you want to give us some from what you heard after the game, what that scene was like too, you can. But they just have to reset, get ready for UAB. I think win or lose, that's going to be a chance for everybody to sort of catch their breath, because after that, you're going to go to Mississippi State, and that game obviously looks a lot tougher than it did a few weeks ago. So, Ryan, do you have any recruiting reactions that you want to share from down there? Obviously, Tennessee had a lot of its commitments and a lot of big-time targets down there.
Yeah, well, we'll still continue catching up with guys over the next couple days. Tennessee had so many players in town for this one. I mean, maybe the most impressive visit list I've seen from a single Tennessee game. That just about the marquee game every season, has a similar list. It seems like where it's really impressive, whether it's the Alabama game, the Florida game, the Georgia game, whatever it is. But this one, more than a dozen 5-stars were on the list, including some guys who we didn't have on the list going into the weekend. For instance, Clemson edge commitment Dre Quinn from Atlanta was in town today. So Tennessee continuing to recruit edge rushers. We'll see where that one goes, but Tennessee at least has his attention up to get a visit from him this weekend, and you get some big time guys in the 2027 class on campus. Kennedy Brown, the number 1 overall player in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Cooper Witten, the 5-star linebacker from Texas, who's obviously the son of Vols legend Jason Witten. David Gabriel George is the 5-star running back from Baylor School in Chattanooga. Haven't caught up with all those guys yet, but some of the initial impressions can pass along. Princeton Uefo, 4-star in-state offensive tackle in the 27 class, continues to be very high on Tennessee. I think the Vols are off to a good start there. Dakota Garant, wide receiver from Michigan, 5-star in the 24/7 Sports Composite, back in town. This was his 3rd visit to Tennessee. Really seems to be high on Tennessee, even though some Midwest schools are going to be heavily involved in that one. It sounds like that if there's an SEC team that can win that one, it might be Tennessee. So the Vols are very much in the thick of that one. So pretty good weekend for Tennessee, and we'll have plenty of coverage of that over the next several days, really, with all the guys they had in town. But a lot of positives are going to come from that, regardless of the fact that you lost the game. And recruits did come away mentioning that hey, Tennessee is a good program like that. I think it shows the progress that no one's looking at this as, hey, Tennessee actually hung with Georgia. Can you believe it? Everyone's saying like, man, they didn't win. Like I think that's a big deal, because I've covered enough of these games and covered this program long enough that a lot of the outlook for Tennessee after these games has been, that let's face it, there've been some 41-10 kind of beatdowns in this series not too long ago, and it was all about the atmosphere. There was hardly anything positive to point to on the field. Tennessee just scored 17 points or more than 17 against Kirby Smart for the first time under Josh Heupel. So to have some things going the right way on the field, you've got that to point to, and yeah, it does seem to be a different perspective of this program that all the recruits in attendance have. They're not surprised that Tennessee hung with them. They see Tennessee as a college football playoff team like they were last year, and just thought it was a good game between two good teams. So, but yeah, an impressive environment. Even guys who were at some big time games last year said this is the best atmosphere I've seen at Tennessee, and in some cases the best atmosphere I've seen anywhere. So, yeah, really impressive weekend for Tennessee, and they'll get a lot of mileage out of this, even in a gut-wrenching loss like this one. One thing I wanted to mention on the team side before I forget, I even mentioned to you, this will get overlooked, I think, given the outcome of the game. I thought Joshua Josephs and Caleb Herring in particular had really good games on defense.
And Jordan Ross, yeah,
that's all three of those guys did some good things. Caleb Herring had a missed tackle inside the 10 where it was a kind of a missed play at the time on a touchdown, I believe, right, on that touchdown run by Gunnar Stockton, and had a chance to wrap him up near the line of scrimmage or in the backfield and didn't do it. After that, he came back, had a sack and a half and a couple tackles for loss. So really impressive game for him. And yeah, Joshua Josephs looked like the big time edge rusher you wanted to be in a couple situations. And obviously the strip sack in the fourth quarter was a huge play in the game. So a lot of good things for this program and for this team to build on, but just again, hard to look at it as anything other than a missed opportunity given the what was on the line and the fact that Tennessee finally had a chance to beat Georgia and let it slip away.
Yeah, it's like when coaches say it's always easier to correct things after a win. It's always everything that could have gone wrong. Well, all the things that explain why you didn't win just get so much more magnified when it's a loss like this. And you did make a good point about Herring and Ross. They need those guys to impact the game more to give them some support behind Josh Josephs too. But I've seen some people upset at coaching and things like that, and I haven't gone back and watched every play to see some calls in some certain situations. I think the offensive play calling and game plan was pretty good. I mean, that first script was great. Tennessee had Georgia in a blender. They had some they really took advantage of some things that Georgia did. The drag and then cut up the field to Braylon Staley was just a really great play call. Tennessee had guys open a lot. Defensively, I mean, there's some things they could have done better for sure. Could they have been more aggressive? I didn't feel like they were sitting back as much. I think that was a big complaint in last season's game. It seems like they were pretty aggressive, but I think
last year they tried to blitz against Carson Beck. He just lit them up when they blitzed. He was really efficient when they tried to blitz, didn't get home enough.
I think probably the biggest thing on defense is that this receiver screens. Like, I mean, they needed to get off blocks better and tackle better in space. And obviously Georgia has really good athletes. I mean, that's obvious. Even, there were questions about this Georgia offense. They didn't look great against Austin Peay, but they still have Georgia athletes. I mean, Zachariah Branch is a All-American kickoff returner. So, and then they finally did make a play on a receiver screen late in the game. Ty Redmond fights through a block and kind of stops it before it gets going. And then they make the play on fourth down. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. So, there's a lot of things to second guess and what if, but man, like it just, sometimes it comes down to a kick and you either make it or you miss it. It's just kind of tough how it is. But, I mean, it'll be interesting for me. I'll do the report card. It'll be on GoVols247 Monday morning. I don't know what I'm going to grade everything yet. This is going to be a tough one to grade. And I'm sure, in the aftermath, some people are like, well, just give them all Fs. They lost. Ultimately that is kind of what the, kind of how it is, but that's not really the spirit of that particular coverage. But
to that point, I'll be interested in seeing sort of what the Pro Football Focus grades turn out to be. At the reaction from some people who were not Tennessee fans watching this game, kind of the national view, I thought was interesting to track on social media, because some people thought this looked like two college football playoff teams going head to head. And so is it that, or is it that neither of these teams is a top 5 team, but they're both good teams, and they just sort of they're both flawed right now and gave up some plays, made some plays, but neither one's a finished product by any means. I'll be interested in sort of seeing what the view of this is. But I mean, I think a lot of people this was the talk of college football. Everybody was watching this game, and I saw so many people on social media saying, if you're not watching Tennessee, Georgia, you need to be. So it was just one of those fun games that I think a lot of people will be talking about for the next few days. I don't think people are going to be coming away saying, man, Tennessee's not that good. I think they're going to be coming away saying, if anything, hey, Tennessee's looked like a playoff team. They hung with Georgia and should have beaten them. I think the only interesting thing will be how Georgia's viewed coming out of this game, because I think they looked better in some areas, maybe not as good in some other areas, but I think you got to give Tennessee credit for what they did offensively. They still didn't run the ball that great against Georgia, but at least the offensive line to me looked like it was holding up better against Georgia than we've seen, in pass protection especially. They've done a great job of protecting Joey Aguilar. 1 sack through 3 games is pretty remarkable considering you've already played Georgia. So they've done a great job with that. They ran the ball with the game on the line in the fourth quarter and had a chance to win because they were able to run on in some run first type situations, trying to run out the clock. I mean, that a lot of good things to build on. So I know people are down right now. It's a missed opportunity, but overall, I think you got to be pretty encouraged with sort of where the program is, and just hope that you don't look back on this as, again, sort of a fork in the road where this team took a negative road when it could have been the type of game that maybe catapulted you into a really big season.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's my final takeaway, is that, like, if you could bottle this performance and do it every week, you'd probably feel pretty good about it, right? But that's the problem with college football, is it's never that easy. It's never that, as Josh Heupel says, it's like a 1-week season every week, or a 1-game season every week. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to go and get 371 yards and 4 touchdowns from Joey Aguilar. It's not a guarantee that your defense is going to play this way. They gave up 500 yards, so they didn't play great. But they'll be better defensively. They'll be worse offensively some weeks. That's why this game is such a missed opportunity, because you don't know what's next. I mean, if you knew they were going to play this well and look this good, you would feel pretty good about the rest of the season. But that's just not how this sport works, and that's why we love it so much. So a tough one for Tennessee. I know it'll be tough for a lot of fans. They probably shut the game off after the end and just maybe went in a dark room and just went to sleep and thought about it. And I don't blame anybody. I know I'm getting texts about people's kids crying watching the game. So it's tough. It was a tough one today. Like I said, we think it's Oklahoma 2015, maybe Florida 2015 with the 4th and 14 where they were up 2 scores. We don't need to rehash all that, but
you had the Hail Mary in 2017, I guess, against Florida. That was, or whatever you want to call that, Hail Mary, that deep pass on the final play.
Yeah, but to your point earlier about, like, I think everybody watching that was like, these teams aren't that good. Right. Yeah, there's that one. And all, I think Florida losses have their own category for Tennessee fans. So that's maybe why it's a little bit different. But, man, you had a chance to beat Georgia for the first time since 2016. You don't get it done. But a lot of season left. We'll have to see where Tennessee goes from here. We'll have plenty of coverage throughout the rest of the night on GoVols247 and also on Sunday as well. Can't even think about what all we do on Sunday. We'll have recruiting post game, and then I think we'll flip the script a little bit to UAB. Probably not a whole lot. The team will. We'll be asking about questions. We'll be asking Georgia questions on Tuesday, and they'll be like, "Well, we've been moved on for a while now." So that's just kind of how this sport works. But we appreciate you guys listening. If you're listening on the podcast, which I hope I can make it. I hope I can cut this podcast up afterwards. I don't know if I actually recorded this, so we'll have to see how it goes. But if you're listening on the stream, appreciate it. And we appreciate you checking out GoVols247 either on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on the podcast, subscribe, leave us a rating and review as well. We appreciate that. And go check us out. We've got, I think, 30% off right now, an annual subscription, but also you can sign up for a month for $1. And at this point, that will get you the next 4 games, Ryan. So that'll get you a good chunk of season with which to follow our coverage and follow this football team. This is just the third game. They've got plenty left. And so we'll have to see how they go from here and what comes of this. So, but tough one tonight for Tennessee. We'll have to see how they bounce back, but they lose this one tonight, 44-41 to Georgia in overtime. For Ryan Callahan, I am Patrick Brown. You guys have a good night.